Really? And what will others think? Keep your voice down, or the neighbors will hear you. If anyone sees this, you and I will embarrass ourselves. Such phrases are familiar to many of us. These are phrases that people often say in everyday life. They seem harmless, but in fact show how much a person depends on the opinions of others. This is not just an attempt to hear a compliment. It is a manifestation of insecurity, which shows that it is important to a person what others think about him. Today, we will talk about two interesting things: how people exaggerate their shortcomings, and how this is due to the fact that they depend too much on someone else's opinion. It's a very common problem to constantly think about what people will think or say about you. It prevents you from living, doing something boldly, and believing in yourself. And do you know what the most interesting thing is? Often people don't even notice how much they influence it. It is not necessary to attach too much importance to other people's opinions and actions, because this often prevents us from living a full life. In a collectivist society like ours, people are often more concerned about the affairs of others than their own, which can become a serious problem. It is important to learn not to pay attention to other people's judgments. After all, life is too short, and soon we will all be gone. Both you and those who now condemn or think badly of you. Along with this, their thoughts and your emotional reaction to them will disappear. Of course, it is impossible to completely ignore other people's words and actions. Life would lose its meaning without emotions, but it is important to remember that you should not take everything to heart. We often focus on our shortcomings much more than they deserve. It may seem like something insignificant to think that you're not very handsome, not smart, or not successful enough. But when these thoughts are constantly spinning in my head, they begin to accumulate and lead to a feeling of powerlessness. The more we fixate on our disadvantages, the easier it is for us to get depressed. Many people, after watching our videos or reading a book on self-improvement, begin to notice negative traits in themselves, which often leads to loss of self-confidence and even depression. However, in order to successfully complete this path, it is necessary to master the art of not dwelling on these thoughts and not paying attention to them. Let me give you an example. Many of us have some kind of ideal image in our heads: how we should look, how we should behave, what heights to achieve. But the problem is that this image most often has nothing to do with reality. We look in the mirror or evaluate our achievements and see a gap between who we are and who we would like to be. And this gap makes us feel worse. We begin to exaggerate our shortcomings, thinking that since we are not perfect, we are probably not good for anything at all. But here's what's important to understand. Everyone has flaws. And that's okay. No one is perfect. Even those who seem perfect to you have their weaknesses too. The main thing is to accept them calmly. You don't need to be ashamed of your disadvantages, you just need to admit that they exist and decide for yourself. If they really interfere, you can safely work on them. But if they are not critical, stop torturing yourself with them. To be honest, I've come across this a lot too. I also saw a lot of flaws in myself and worried about them. But with experience, I realized that these experiences are more of a hindrance than a help. I stopped dwelling on what was wrong and started working on what I could change. And what I can't change, I just accept. They say that a happy person, looking at himself in the mirror, will never say, "I'm happy." If I hadn't encountered laziness myself, do you think I would have looked for ways to deal with it? Or would I think about solving business problems if I didn't have them? Of course not. Problems and shortcomings are a normal part of life. They need to be taken for granted and not worried about them. The main thing is to work calmly and consistently to eliminate them. Here are some tips. If something bothers you about yourself, don't panic or beat yourself up. Take a calm look at this. If this is important to you, start working on it step by step. And if it's not important, just let it go. Your life will become much easier when you stop suffering because of your imperfections. Imagine this situation. You decide to go to the gym. At first, you're full of enthusiasm, but as soon as you go inside, you notice people around with pumped up muscles and perfect figures. Immediately, the thought appears, I look stupid here. Everyone is looking at me. Probably everyone thinks that I don't belong here. And what happens next? Many people just stop studying, not because the training is too difficult, but because they worry about what others will think of them. Or, here's another example. Someone dreams of learning to play the guitar, learn a new language, or maybe start writing a book. But as soon as it comes to the first step, a person begins to be tormented by doubts. He thinks, what if I don't succeed? What will friends or family say? Suddenly, I will be ridiculed for not immediately achieving success. And as a result, the person abandons his dream, not because he is incapable, but because he is afraid of condemnation or criticism from other people. One thing is important to understand here. Someone else's opinion is just an opinion. It doesn't make you better or worse. Moreover, people often don't even think about us as much as we think they do. Most are busy with their own affairs, and their thoughts about you are most likely fleeting. Accept your shortcomings and realize that your life belongs to you, not to others. Of course, it can be nice to hear praise or recognition, but if you constantly strive for the approval of others, you can lose yourself. You need to learn to live for yourself, and not in order to meet the expectations of other people. Start doing what you want without looking at the opinions of others. After all, in the end, your happiness and success depend only on you and not on what others think or say. Start thinking like this. Yes, I have flaws, and I don't hide them from myself or from others. I'm a human being, and it's okay to have my weaknesses. I will work on myself, striving for development, but I do it not for others, but for myself. I don't care about the opinions of others. This is my life, and only I decide what it will be like. It is impossible to strive for the ideal. People who really respect and appreciate me will accept me for who I am, and those who disagree don't have to be around. This will help you feel calmer. After all, thinking about your shortcomings often leads to the formation of complexes. To ignore someone else's opinion, you need to learn how to approach it consciously. Here are 3 simple tips to help you abstract from what others are saying. 1. Put up with negative opinions. There will always be those in life who don't like something, but it's important to remember, you don't have to meet their expectations. If someone expresses a negative opinion, there is no need to argue with them or try to convince everyone otherwise. Understand that this is just their point of view, not the truth. Keep moving along your path no matter what. When you stop worrying about every criticism, your self-confidence will increase significantly. 2. Test your beliefs. Sometimes criticism can be useful. It is important to be able to take it calmly and ask yourself the question, is there a rational grain in this? If the criticism is justified, it can be used for growth, but at the same time, don't let it undermine your confidence or self-esteem. Just take it as information for reflection, not as a verdict. If the criticism is not constructive and is aimed only at hurting you, ignore it. 3. Write down the names of those who may criticize. Sometimes the fear of other people's opinions seems huge and all-encompassing, although in fact, it is just a vague anxiety. Try to write down on paper the names of people whose opinions can really influence you. Most likely, there will be very few such people. Realizing this helps to relieve tension because the opinion of everyone is a myth. This way, you can specify who exactly you are afraid of, and it often turns out that most of these fears are far-fetched. Ultimately, your opinion of yourself is the most important thing. Yes, sometimes it's worth listening to others, but only to those you trust and whose criticism can really be useful. All the others are just a background that should not prevent you from going to your goals and living the way you want. So, in the end, I want to emphasize the most important thing. No one should control your life except yourself. It is important to learn how to make decisions on your own without looking at the opinions of others. Life is too short to spend it trying to please everyone. Yes, people's opinions may sound loud, but only you know what is best for you. No one else will live your life for you. There will always be people in the world who will criticize, compare, or condemn you, but you should not become their puppet, dependent on other people's words and expectations. Your goals, dreams, and choices belong only to you. It is important to have the courage to follow your own path, even if this path will not always be understood or accepted by others. Therefore, my call to you is, don't be afraid to be yourself. Don't be afraid to move forward, even if someone criticizes you. Manage your life. Live for yourself, not for others. And then you will feel real satisfaction with who you are and where you're going.